Yeah, we got we got a lot of white balancing on there. We're live tonight. I want to talk about 305 intake manifold. You see up on social media now. They're doing a whole series. It might even be done now. Somebody else is doing 305 versus 302, like the original, like five, not original, but the 5 liter stuff from back in the day, from back in the 90s. And if you look back at 2017, I did a similar thing where we did a 5 liter Ford versus a 5 liter Chevy. The 5 liter Chevy was Tuneport, and obviously the 5 liter Ford, the 5 liter Ford. And then we did, mild modifications, and then wilder modifications, and then carbureted stuff, and then ported heads and nitrous and blowers, all kinds of stuff, kind of with the full gamut. And then somebody thought, hey, this is a good idea, and we'll redo this thing. And they're doing lots of cool stuff. So I really like that. I think it's a good premise. And obviously it's very popular because guys still like that. Guys like the nostalgia thing. And it's interesting. I wonder how people think, like, is that Camaro Z or Mustang Z28, is that battle every bit as important as it was back in the Boss 302 and DZ 302 days? Is that more iconic than the Tuneport battle in the 80s and 90s? I don't know. Maybe it depends on when you grew up and stuff, and what you got to go see race and stuff. But they were, Chevrolet and Ford obviously were continuing the pony car stuff, and they were continuing battling in the marketplace. And I think you could argue on the street and on the track as well. But I just think it's a cool thing. The interesting thing, though, is in this comparison, we started off with a stock motor. So we ran a factory 5 liter motor and then ran a factory 302. And not surprising, given the rated power outputs, they were pretty comparable. But it begs the question, because I can't remember if it was before. I think it was before that where I did Tuneport. I think it definitely was before that where I did Tuneport 350 stuff. We actually tested on a 383, and I did Tuneport an intake shootout where I gathered together as many of the different Tuneport versions as I could find, and then also threw in a carbureted one, a single plane, a dual plane, kind of the normal things that you do on small blocks. And just to show what differences they make. So we ran like the TPS Mini Ram, we ran the Excel Super Ram, and then various versions of the ported and larger, TPIS, big tube runners and ported lowers and, all that stuff. But it begs the question, like on the 305 in particular, is there an intake setup, a Tuneport, let's say, era, or something that resembles kind of Tuneporty on the induction side? Is there one of those that's better than all of the rest? And I think that given the 305 displacement, it all depends on where you're trying to make power, really. Because if you look at the different versions of those manifolds, like a mini Ram definitely is a high RPM thing. And I argued this when Chevrolet went to, I got a golden retriever here. I argue this when Chevrolet went from the L98 to the LT1, that they put a really short runner manifold on. I'm like, yeah, and that's good. I mean, it made, like, that motor made 50 more horsepower than it did before, which is good. Everybody wanted it. But it obviously had to trade torque production in order to do that because of the runner length. That's what happens when you do runner length changes. And so when we did this intake shootout on the Tuneport stuff, and then when I did the 305 stuff, same thing. Is it like, what do you want to happen? Do you still want, because what we often get is with this Tuneport stuff and with the 305 as well, is you get guys that are like, okay, but I want all the torque that I have. I don't want to give up any of that. But I just also want to rev out past, 4,500 or whatever. I'm like, well, you're not going to get both of those because you're not going to get the long runner length torque, especially down in the low RPM ranges. You're not going to get that. And then, like, you can't just put a camshaft in a Tuneport motor and then all of a sudden that means that it will want to make power now out at 6,000 or 7,000 RPM. It just doesn't happen. A camshaft won't do that because the intake manifold is getting in the way. It's like, look, I'm optimized to have like power production, let's say to 5,000, but beyond that, I'm not going to be effective. My reflected wave and stuff is going to be happening at a different RPM. It's not going to be ideal for those higher engine speeds because it's not going to be arriving at the right time relative to the piston position. So it's just not going to work. You can't just go, oh, well, I'm going to get all the goodness from the long runner intake and I'm going to get all the goodness from the high RPM cam and I'm going to make that work. It doesn't work like that. But using the same cam, if you change to a different intake manifold, which we did when we tested all those different intake manifolds, and then we did some of that on the 305 as well. Like if you put the photo that I'm showing on the thumbnail is the Stealth Ram. So basically it's a tunnel rammy kind of intake manifold with a box on it and then the throttle body mount, a Tuneport throttle body mount, so that it looks like a Tuneport. You could make the box do anything. It could be a side mount. It could be a twin throttle body mount. It could be anything, you know, under the sun. And we see that with now Holley went from, let's call that their early experiment with the Stealth Ram thing. And then they went to the high ram. And so now the high ram has all sorts of different iterations that you can put on top of it. You know, single throttle bodies, multiple throttle bodies, 4-hole throttle bodies, carburetors, dominators, a plain one that you can make your own thing with, you know, and all kinds of stuff. And so you have those options. And the cool thing now is you have the high ram now available for the small block Chevy and for the big block Chevy, which those are probably awesome. And I would think, I haven't seen a test on them. I haven't seen anybody else do it, so maybe I'll have to do it. I haven't seen a comparison of that earlier Stealth Ram to a high ram on a small block Chevy. My guess is that it's going to, you know, the results are going to vary based on what the rest of the combination is. Is it a stock motor? Is it a mild motor? Is it a bigger than a 305 motor? You know, is it a 383 or what are we trying to achieve here? And then the intake manifold will go, well, I work better on this kind of thing. And, you know, we saw that with the other Tuneport things. I think that probably would carry over, but to a lesser extent between those two things, because the Stealth Ram was kind of a higher RPM thing relative to a factory Tuneport or any of the aftermarket or ported versions of the Tuneport as well, because those all had similar runner lengths. We had some that had Siamese runners, and those changed the effective RPM range a bit. And then we had a pretty good change in runner length with the Excel Super Ram, and then obviously a big change with the Mini Ram stuff. But the SLP and all of the versions of the long runner things, you know, all kind of wanted to make power in the lower RPM range. The Stealth Ram, though, it was a tunnel ram because it was basically their Wyand tunnel ram that they could put this box on with fuel injectors, which worked really good. And so it was a good, solid performer, but it did lose power down low compared to these long runner TPI things because it doesn't have that runner length, even though it's, let's say it's longer than the short runners on a single plane manifold, a tunnel ram normally is, but it's not long compared to the, you know, double cross rammy thing of the Tuneport setup. So it's not going to have that sort of torque production. It's not going to want to make power in that same kind of RPM range. But what it does do is it's a good, like, I call it a good compromise there between you know, some sort of high RPM carbureted single plane race manifold thing, or even a mini ram, that the Stealth Ram is a good option that goes in between those. So it's, you know, it's not going to be, you know, mini ram top end power maybe, and it's not going to be TPI low end power, but it's going to be good for, you know, it's going to be a good balance of all of that stuff. And so if a guy wants to make, you know, if you've got a Tuneport motor, especially a 305, and let's say you wanted to make 400 horsepower, you're not going to get that with a long runner Tuneport thing. It's going to be hard to get that even with a Tuneport 350, but with a long runner setup. But with a Stealth Ram, that's certainly possible because it's going to make power more like, I would say more like a good dual plane, maybe a little more high RPM than a dual plane. But the thing is, when we compare a dual plane to stuff, you know, the taking off even on a factory motor, taking off the Tuneport stuff and putting on a dual plane RPM or RPM air gap and a carburetor on there, it makes a lot more power. Again, it doesn't make all the really low speed power, although a dual plane does fairly well, but it does make quite a bit more power on top. And then the Stealth Ram thing, I like the Stealth Ram thing for guys that are want to keep that Tuneport look in that era Camaro or Corvette or Firebird, whatever they have. And so it still looks like that, but it's a little bit more modern. Now I want to see guys do a high ram on that, but it will give up. I don't know if they have a setup, a lid for it that uses that oval or dual blade, Tuneport kind of throttle body on it. I'm not sure if they did that. I don't know why they would. It'd be much better off to do a, something big. Let's put a 75, 90 or 102 or whatever on there. And so we know that it's never going to be restricted, even though on a 305, a 90 or a 102 on a 305 is probably going to be overkill, because that's going to be like a cammed, 4.8 or something. So it's going to be that kind of power, I would imagine. You can get 400 to go beyond 400 with a 305 takes a pretty good bit of effort and some fairly good cylinder heads. It's kind of the problem with the bore size on that. But at any rate, the stealth ram manifold, I think it's pretty good. Maybe one of the best. If you guys can think of something that's better than that for like a 305 specifically, and we're talking about a modified 305, something that would have like the only set of aluminum heads that are available for it, the trick flows, those 175s, a cam in it and stuff. And if there's a better Tuneport manifold, let me know what you guys think. Let's see here. We can start our poll. Okay, would you choose a stealth ram over a dual plane and carb setup on your 305 build for all of the 305 builds that you want to do? I know that you secretly do, because 305s are so much cooler than 350s. They just make less power. Crash, Jet, what's going on? Wastegate and blow off valve from RHP showed up second day. Haven't been home to unpack them yet. That's good, though, that you know that they're there. They're safe. Does a small block 400 with an L98 aluminum head need steam holes drilled? Yes. Machines told me I don't need steam holes with aluminum heads. Yes, it does, because it's not a function of the head. The best 305 intake is the TPI. Jim. Yes, sir, it does. Those heads are pretty small for a 400. Yeah, and the L98 head they're going to have really small combustion chambers. So what are you doing, like, compression wise on them? Jonathan, good evening. Been watching your videos for years and trying to jump onto the LQ9 single turbo bandwagon. That's a good bandwagon to be on. Pretty easy. Put a cam in it, put springs in it, put injectors in it, put a turbo of your choice, depending on what power level you want, and away you go. The mini ram and LT manifold are pretty versatile. Short runner or large plenum works well on a variety of engines, but generally not a 305. They're fun on a 4-inch bore 302. Yeah, they work well. Having run that a few times, that they work well at high RPM. They were small for a 400, but probably better than 882s that were on it for the truck. Oh, the 882s are not good. No, that's a smog head. For stock engines, Vortec intake is awesome. Aside from fuel system, I'd go along with that. I kind of would like. I'd like to see that test. Like, I'd like to see that the later like L31 kind of intake manifold and see how well that does compared to some of this other stuff. This discussion was not on your bingo card. I know we bounce around on a lot of stuff. Got an intake made by McFarlane as one of the 6 prototypes for GM for the 1LE Camaro. Would be curious how it would perform. It's a tunnel ram type setup. LTG, send me a picture of that over, or maybe Jim has seen it. Probably has. Works along the same lines as an LT1 intake. Tested those with Callaways in the early 90s. See, I knew Jim would know. If you want to talk Tuneport, he knows. Excel Super Ram was about the best TPI intake, especially on a 383 with AFR heads at a Vortec back in the day. It was a brutal combination. That's what I had on. I had a 406 that had that Excel Super Ram. It had AFR heads on it. It had a hydraulic roller cam that was like in the mid 230s and a Vortec on it. And it was easily I think we ran it at, I don't know, 650 or 700 horsepower or something like that. Pretty versatile. No fun to work on though. always like the look of the Tuneport. It's still my favorite looking intake manifold, factory intake manifold. Tap the lower runner and put bolts in from the top. Prestige, what's going on? Stealth Ram makes a decent mid-range. Suffers a bit with larger cams because of the runner orientation. Behemoth Valve Train is interested in one of my crazy ideas. There you go. When will the 3076 be on the website, and what's the pricing? The 3076 is available already, I think. I think Jimmy has those, the mirror image ones. I'll check with him tomorrow and find out why they're not up. I had a TPI 350 torque monster. Yeah, quits pulling at 5,000. The best Tuneport 305 intake is the one with rotors in it. Yeah, or an impeller. The right cam and intake will help that. The best intake for any motor is the one with a rotor pack in it. Yep. Do I make my 6-liter 3rd gen a 408? Well, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I don't normally recommend the strokers for guys doing boost on a 6-liter, but if you're not doing boost and you're going to keep it NA and you want, more average power specifically, then a 408 is a good way to go, because strokers obviously make more power everywhere. Best induction is force. There you go. CNC ported 113 L98 heads work excellent on a 305 with 58 cc chambers. Yeah, I would agree with that. Because none of the 305s came with aluminum heads, right? Did they only put those on the 350s? I also acquired a set of Dana 44 beams. Do you mean axles? This one might be different. I showed it off to Reeves, and he didn't recognize it. Actually thought it was a knockoff of his 100 plus. Richard, if you got an LY6 engine from the junkyard and want to put it in your car to run it with a turbo to reach 800 to 900 horsepower daily use, how are you going to do it? What would be the steps? You would do what I did to the Big Bang motor, kind of. I would take it apart. I would put ring gap in it. I'd put it back together with new head gaskets and head studs. And then I would put injectors in it. You could get our 1,000 cc injectors in it. And I would put a G42 turbo on it, and you're on your way. And then put a cam and springs in it. I forgot about that. Put a low buck truck or a truck plus cam and springs in it, and you're good to go. 10-to-1 with L98 heads. That's a good streetable compression with an aluminum head. Danny, what's going on? Did a car later on with it because it was an EGR valve. He wanted to use the mini ram, but they didn't have an EGR valve. Richard, have you tried the cheap Holley high ram copy from eBay? I haven't tried it, but I would think that it's probably going to be comparable. When are we doing a Richard Rates Our Rides? I can. We can go through pictures. I would do it with the other streaming service so that we could show the photos, though. But if you guys want to send readers rides, that's great. Any love for the LT1? I haven't seen you do too many videos on. I do like the LT1. It's a little problematic to run on the engine dyno for us with fuel injection on it. But the LT1's a better motor. I mean, it certainly makes more power. And it's really good as far as small blocks go. I would argue that it has better heads, and it has a manifold that would allow it to rev, and you put a camshaft in it. Jim, are you affiliated with TPIS? I have Chinese versions of the Edelbrock ProFlow for my 91 Corvette because there's not a whole lot of options that are reasonably priced that fit under the hood. Just wish there was more testing. An Edelbrock ProFlow, you mean are you talking about the single plane intake manifold with the throttle body on it? Or the tunnel rammy kind of thing? I didn't know that would fit under the hood of a Corvette. Correct, just using the 87 just used on the 87 to 91 Corvettes. Saw you talking to the Young Man's interview channel about the LS1, 2, and 3. Also the LQ4, 5.3 aluminum from a truck. I love it. Was that the Street Alpha podcast. Richard, I have an LQ4, all forged, EQ 364 head, CNC ported, 10-to-1 compression, 240, 264, 116. Best street manners intake. I think that ship has already sailed with that camshaft. I mean, a 116, not a 240 is not going to be probably horrible, but if it's a drag and drive thing, where are you wanting it to make power? Because you could put a stock truck intake manifold on and it will drive better, but it's going to limit power. What will be a good way to boost a 305 Chevy is that you can follow the procedures that guys have put up there. I have videos up on it. You can do a carbureted version of it. You could do a Tuneport version of it. You could put boost on it. All of that stuff works. The elephant in the room was tuning the TPI with the EEPROM chips. Yeah, they worked, but not great though. On a 305, I put a dual plane and a carb because on a 305, why not add a Zex plate and spray it? Yeah, you can put nitrous on all that stuff. Edelbrock Pro Flow in the shape of a mini ram. Okay, I've run those on LS motors. I don't remember running one of those on a small block though, but that should be a good intake manifold. Use an EEPROM like today. It's just as quick as reflashing any modern ECU. A double E. I went through that. I went through more of that, less of that with the. I went through some of that with the 5-liter Ford that I had and Kenny Bell and chips and stuff. But I went through way more of that when I was doing the Honda stuff with the S100 and the S200 and the S300. We finally got to where we could just do it directly without having to change EEPROMs. But I went through the whole zero interforce socket stuff after trying to push and bend prongs and all that. Because I did a lot of testing with the Honda, like I do a lot of testing with most things, and we were tuning it with the S100, and it required a lot of chip changes. My buddy said, forget a Supra. They were 30,000 back in 210. He decided to cam his Z28, made 460 with a bad Lopi shifter shaking idle. Now he's got an LS3 Vet, 600 horsepower. So something other than stock, obviously. Should I stroke my Texas block out when I forge it? I'm buying a whole new bottom end, always planning big boost. 5-liter stroker is what I have eyes on. I don't think you should do the stroker with the boost. I mean, the boost is the turbos that you have are going to determine what's going on with the power. I don't know if making it that big is going to weaken it at all. Steve Martin, are you asking me if I have a burner? I think I might still have the burner. It's a 4.6 Ford. We'll have 4-valve heads. The Street Alpha podcast was fun. That's where Jimmy and I went to see Tukes, and we went to Florida, and that was a cool deal. That was a fun deal. Best website to rebuild my first LS53, a step-by-step, or is there some racing bolt torque spec? All of the bolt torque specs are really easy to find. You just do a search for that, and you'll come up with a number of pages that have all the torque specs for Gen 3 and Gen 4 stuff. So depending on what year you have, that's really easy to find. A how-to on how to put it together, there are probably videos up on YouTube on step-by-step stuff. I got the stream up. My dog throws up in my bed. Yeah, dogs are sometimes like that. I wish someone would make an LT1 or TPI intake look alike for the LS engine. Holly sells the HP and a harness made for this. For what? For the Tuneport stuff? Yeah, we use the universal Holly harness. It's just for a standard distributor. It works on anything. We could, not just for a Tuneport setup, but how far can you go with RPM on a stock LY6? And do you have to change the stock oil pump if you increase RPM? So my question is, first, how much power do you want to make? And then why do you want to run lots of RPM? As you go up in RPM, you're going to go down in reliability. Aces ECU or Holly X-Max ECU, what do you like? I've never done anything with Aces, so I don't know. I've only used Holly. Jim says Holly every time. Tried using Aces a few customer projects and they don't work well. So there you go. See, Jim's done both. I have not done Aces ever. Good to see you guys get away. What's going on? Had tornadoes touch down. Uh-oh. Gotta be safe out there. I bought a Phytech standalone for the ProFlow, but eventually I'm dropping in a ring gap TBI bottom topped with the dart heads, mild cam, and hopefully boost. Okay. Any experience with K-Series Frankenstein motors, the KA20 head on a K24 block? But that's not really a Frankenstein motor. I mean, a K24 block already has I would argue it already has a K20 head on it. Because I hear figures like 300 horsepower NA, and I'm curious if that's true. No, I mean, you're not going to get 300 without a lot of stuff done to it. So big cams, probably I'm guessing a stack injection, that kind of thing. I'd have to go back and look. I don't, when we ran our NA thing at Skunk, I don't know if we got to 300. I'll go look and see. Those numbers are certainly possible, and they're way more than that when guys start adding they run like, you know, nitromethane mixes. Dyno results. K-Series. There's some NA stuff. I gotta go through my secret trapdoor here. Scrolling. Dyno session, NA, and we have turbo. Yeah, I think we were, where are we at here? I think 265 or something like that. 255, 260, something like that is where we were when we ran some stuff. We had ITBs on it. Had K24, stock head, some sort of skunk cams in it. And we ran a few different intake manifolds on it. But yeah, I wrote 2 books on Honda stuff, including stuff on K-Series. And I have a K24. Twin S475s are going to be hard to spool. Oh, I didn't know you were doing that. Okay. Yeah, if you could make it bigger then. You're going to try to make 2,000 horsepower? Should I get bigger CC heads for my 305, or should I just keep the old ones and port them for boost application? Well, how much power are you trying to make? You can port the stock ones, but if you have a 305, I would put aluminum heads on it, because that's going to be better. Best recommended cam for a 305. Everything is great. I think there's still more to it. It blows up. There's a 350 waiting. Something mild. If it's a 98 305, are you going to be able to tune it? Because it's going to be fuel injected. If you can tune it, then some kind of cam that's going to be 212, 218, or 218, 224 at 50. Have you seen the K48 that somebody's building? I have seen that. Yeah, it's cool. Poly makes part number 55601. It's a small block stealth ram harness, even though it's just a bit longer, but the same plugs for the TPI tunnel ram. Okay. We don't the harness that we use, like the universal one, already has a it has a TPS and designed for a Chevy throttle body. We get the harness is a V8 LS harness, or I mean it's just a V8 harness, and you can pick either EV6 or EV1 plugs. You can even pick trucks if you want that, you know, specific LS stuff. But those harnesses fit everything. The only Honda I'd get would be a K24 Z3 Civic SI as a daily, but they're surprisingly quick and excellent daily driver. Yep. With the low gearing 1.2 output shaft transaxle. I don't know what that is. Do we want to talk about how Honda detuned the K24 because it made more power than the S2000? How did they detune it? And I think that sounds like something that K-Series guys would want to be true, but that F-Series guys, I mean, I have found that second guessing Honda engineers doesn't really turn out well for anybody except for the Honda engineers. Work about with just any MPFI on a small block Chevy. Yeah, that's what we use. If you're going to make the perfect sleeper, what would you create? I would like a Nash Metropolitan. What kind of power are you planning on making for Prestige? Those are big turbos for 4.6. I agree, but you know, the Holley 55601 also wired to plug in the small cap HEI for timing control. Yeah, we put when we run these things, when we run any small block Chevy that we're running EFI, including these that would be Tuneport, we run an MSD so that the Holley thing is just a plug into it. And the MSD is locked, so we control the timing. Or we can not control the timing. We could run it that way too. 700 horsepower, my Express van could run 12s. Kinsler stack is currently like 4,000. Yeah, they're not cheap. And I was only able to test one because the guys at Skunk had them. Do you know if the Edelbrock air gap gives more horsepower over Victor Jr. on a 305? Yes, it would. It'd be a way better choice. .5 turbo supposedly gets like 40 miles per gallon versus the K24 30-ish. Anything turbo is not reliable. Why would you say that? The ZZ604 is good for the 305. Head lift limitations. '98 305 already tuned, EGR delete, 99 Suburban gears, disc brakes, stroke up immediately after cat delete, and Corvette servo. Corvette servo, so you can chirp that second gear, right? Are we still getting the clicking noises? Because I moved stuff around to stop the clicking noise. So let me know if the clicking noise is still happening. Richard, have you found 100 horsepower cam yet? Nope. I'll definitely check out GPI because you said they were known for NA stuff. They tuned my truck, and actually it's great. No, they do great stuff. I don't need to go to somebody else for a cam. I just need to pick the cam that I want to do. Would you mind running the eBay LS intake if you're going to turbo and only wanted 600 horsepower? Have a TBS or Trailblazer SS intake. It's just not very good looking. It's not very good looking, but the Trailblazer SS is definitely going to make more power through most of the curve than that eBay intake manifold. It's going to be really hard to beat that a truck or a Trailblazer SS intake manifold up to 6,000 RPM. And so you'll have better boost response with that kind of manifold. I know it doesn't look good. I get that. And I get why people want to change it. But from a performance standpoint, it's hard to beat. I saw the video about it. I guess tuners are making upper 200 horsepower on pump gas. 200 horsepower on what? Any real benefits of electric turbo versus exhaust turbo, low end, torque only? I haven't seen any testing on the electric stuff, but if you can spin the thing up, if you have enough electric motor to spin the turbo up and have it make boost, at a really low RPM where you couldn't do that by sizing the turbo otherwise. Because you could have a big enough turbo where you could spool it up and then have, better boost response. Essentially, I think that's more aimed toward an OEM kind of application. There's a whole story about K24 making something like 278 horsepower with optimum runners and very likely a large cam. So they put a longer intake and limited variable cam profiles. See, that's not, I think that's a little disingenuous of who's ever talking about that. Because what they're saying is if we modify a K24, that it can make stock F-Series power. And yes, that's possible, but that's not the K24 was designed by the Honda engineers for a specific purpose. Very rarely do they ever design a motor to make maximum power, because believe me, if they wanted to make more power, they could. And so if you put a shorter runner manifold on it, put more cam timing in it, put more head flow in it, put, more compression in it, you can do all of that. So that's not even really a question. 9,000 to 1,000 on wastegate, EGR or E85, E98 with meth injection under boost. Yeah, that's not those aren't anywhere good turbos for that application. Especially not good for that application, not for that motor size and not for that power output. Unless you're only talking about that's the minimum amount of power that you want to make. Maybe that's it. I hope that's it. Oh, 1,800 turned up. Okay, see, I don't read down yet. 2,000 on the good luck. Okay. To not shell the hype of selling the S2000 like when Datsun ended the faster roadster to promote the 240Z. You think a 2-liter roadster was faster than a 240Z? I love all these conspiracy things. It's great. 305 class sprint cars make 600 horsepower NA. They aren't even competitive in the Midwest. How would you go about tuning an engine with no knock sensors? I never run knock sensors when we tune it on the engine dyno. Just watch the torque down low and be gracious with timing, or would it really need to go in for some dyno time? You could listen for knock, or you could watch for knock if you have a factory system that has knock sensors. But if you have no knock sensors and no experience in tuning the combinations and knowing what kind of timing that they'll tolerate, given the kind of fuel that you run and temperature and stuff, it has potentially problematic. $2,000 on a 4.6. Mahovit's got near $4,000. Yeah, I don't doubt the power number. That's not. I just didn't know you wanted to make that much. But there would be a lot better turbos than that. Even to do 2,000, there would be much better turbos. Just picked up a 427 big buck Chevy. What's your opinion on a streetable build for that? Well, you just tell me what kind of power output you want, and that motor is big enough that you can make lots of streetable power. The camshaft is going to determine the drivability. Honestly, you probably just make it a 496 and then not worry about it. And then that way you could have, a fairly good sized cam in it, but the displacement tames all of that. But if you want to keep it at 427, you can. I would put aluminum heads on it, Edelbrock or something, put a 230-ish kind of cam in it. And with a 427, it's probably still single plane, I guess. If you're going to create the perfect sleeper, what car and motor setup would you? I don't do that. The I can tell you the ones that I wanted to have. Like I've always liked the other versions of stuff, like the Fairmont and Granada stuff for the 5-liter stuff, the Galant VR4 instead of the Eclipse. I like those better. Those kinds of things are cool. The ones that people don't know about, where they put the hot setup in some kind of unassuming sedan. Like I always like the AMC Hammer, the 185 mile an hour sedan. I think that those are cool. I always wanted a BMW M5 with like an 88 M5, the square snarky looking one with an LS motor in it. All of those would be cool. Well, it'd be a good idea to do a twin turbo setup, one electric, one exhaust, or would that be a problem? Yeah, you're going to have problems with one spooling up and backfeeding the other one unless you do all kinds of rigmarole on valving and stuff for them. If you're going to do electric and you're going to do a single, that works fine. If you're going to do electric, do twin electrics, and then you don't have to have an exhaust one. You just get that out of the way. As long as the electric ones work the way that an exhaust one works, I don't have any testing to know that, but if they do, if they can get them to do everything that the exhaust does, that's fantastic. My LS 383 peaks at 5,500 with a 226 cam. I'd like it to peak at 6,000. You could change the intake manifold. Does it have stock heads on it also? 1930 for a Phaeton. Would you do a small Chevy or an LS? It's hard when the whole front end is open. Well, you can kind of put in anything that you want, right? That thing's not going to be a performance thing, right? It's just going to be a drive around thing. I think I might go with something weirder, like a big inline 6-cylinder, like put a 2J in or put an RB in or something. Maybe something bigger, like like an Atlas. If you only need 100 octane, 116 will never knock. That's right. You don't need a knock sensor. Just keep advancing until the bar starts to fall off, then back off a degree or two. You can do stuff like that if you have low water temperature, like we run on the dyno. But on the street, I don't think that that's going to work very well. Probably going to do more research into it. I know my goals, but I don't know if GT45s will get me there. GT45s won't get you to 2,000 horsepower. They won't get you anywhere near that. But I thought you were doing S475s. What mileage should one consider changing out the stock LS1 springs? My truck has 355,000 miles on it. So gauge it based off of that. It's possible to make 500 wheel on a 351 with stock cranking rods without boost and still be streetable. No, it won't be streetable because that's going to be a 600 horsepower 351. So that's going to have a really, really big camshaft in it and lots of cylinder head. Probably compression, a single plane or stack injection or some sort of short runner kind of thing. My idea of the perfect sleeper would be something weird like a K-swap Ford Tempo. I always like the Shoguns too, the ones, the Fiestas or Festivas with the SHO Taurus thing in the back. Because I like the Renault R5 Turbo 2s. I like those cars. And I like all the Group B cars, the RS200, the 20516 Peugeots. I like all of those. Those are really cool. Richard, Gen 453. Ported 799s, long tubes, Truck Norris. What intake do you have on that? And I don't know how well your heads are ported. But that combination is going to be like 450 or something like that, depending on what intake you have at the flywheel. And so 350, 360 at the wheels on an automatic. I want to put a 5-cylinder Atlas in a Camaro or a Corvette. There you go. 702 GMC V12. That would definitely be different. I want a Fairmont or Futura. Yeah, those are good. Yeah, I like the Granada, all of those. I wanted to run one of those at the Silver State. I mean, it would be worse than a Mustang, but still just kind of cool. Just watched a TikTok that said, grind the top of your piston for more compression. Yeah. In Bizarro world. 500 to 700 for the 427. I'd go on Nova and be debating a manual automatic trans. Well, the problem is when you describe your desired power output with that big of a range. Like a 500 horsepower build is completely different than a 700 horsepower build is. So whichever one of those you want, you have to decide and go all in. A 700 horsepower 427 is not going to be very drivable. It's going to be a big cammed compression ported head kind of thing. Unless you do a 496, then it will be milder. It'll still be pretty big at 700 horsepower. All those things will be big. Oh yeah, that'd be awesome at a BMW. 5-cylinder and E46. I haven't bought big turbos yet. I still have GT35s, but GT45 is the next logical step. Or GT50 is the thing. No, but I have turbos for that. If you're trying to make 2,000 horsepower, right, we have turbos that will do that. Toyota 2.5 has a knock sensor depending on where you get gas, or even E85 or half E85. The Cyan TC probably can't run 14s on those higher tests mentioned. Twin 7875s. Bob Glidden saw Fairmont with the Boss 429. That's not that stealthy though, especially if it has the stickers all over it. But definitely cool. I did like the one car I did like was the Torino Talladega that the guy brought to West Tech. That's probably my favorite car that anybody brought there. 553 lift on the Truck Norris cam, stock Trailblazer SS or NBSS and 87 millimeters probably. Yeah. If it's an automatic, it's going to be 350, 360 probably. TikTok is where brain cells go to die. 7875s, if you're going to get 7875s, you need to get the latest generation of those. Not just the cast 7875s. You should get twin G42s. They would be better. And you should get G42s, and you should get V bands, not T4s. Kind of building a sleeper, trying to go LS all-wheel drive. Nice, that would be good. SC2 or K24. Super leaning the LS. It is easy to make power with an LS. Just met a guy with an M5 twin turbo N55. What year is the M5? Because if it's a newer one, talk to the hand. They're great. Like don't they make a V10 V10 M5? Those are really cool. I think that's fantastic. Even if the turbo ones make more power or faster or whatever, it's still a V10. Those are cool, but I still like the 88, and I still just want to do an engine swap in one of those. And even just a stock one, even a mild cammed LS3 or something. You kind of have to have boost in it though, right? I'm just figuring out a build because I have a spare 351 roller block. I want to get some good power out of it with having to spend $6,000. I'll replace the 351 in my Mustang. Someone should make a block to mount 2 Atlas 5-cylinder heads and then one to mount 2 4200 heads. Puppet Master, what's going on? Had my 3A3 dynode, and then your message disappeared. What's going on? V-band T42's got it. That will be 2.5-inch V-band or 3-inch. I think that they're 3-inch. In my Chevy 305, but we give you the V-bands with that you need to weld on with the turbos. My Chevy 305, I'd like to put a comp cam with a 525 lift, Brock RPM dual quad intake, 2 650s on boost. It's going to be you're going to run boost on that on 2 carburetors on a dual quad. I salute you, first of all. That's awesome, but it's going to be really problematic. And it sounds like it's going to be way more than you should be applying to a 305 to start out with. I want to make a Volvo, a V70 Volvo. There you go. I did like the Volvo T5Rs. I like the wagons. Talked to you last week about my 383, 12-to-1, big cam, trick flow. A trick flow R series intake on a, is this a 383 small block Chevy? And so it's a single plane intake manifold. Might get a single 3584 for 6 liter. It'd be content at 500 horsepower. It'll be very responsive, but you should wait. We're about to test the 3584 version of a turbo for the 6 liter. Cleveland powered Super Stalker made a little over 600. Cam lift was 700. Wouldn't call it streetable, but we would drive it around on occasion. Yeah. How much? And you guys had really good heads on there, right? Not stock heads. And then it was how high was the compression, and what was the duration, and how much over 260 was it? My 3/3 long twos, LSXR, matching throttle body, intake tube, ported 243s, truck Norris cam, made 386 and 427 foot-pounds. Okay. That combination is just being held back by that small cam, because the rest of that stuff could make a lot more. If the heads are ported properly, you already have a good intake manifold, you already have a 383. So that's a situation where you put a cam in and you could get like 100 horsepower from a much bigger cam, if that's what you wanted. But that thing probably drives around. It's great. Yeah, Prestige. We have cams from this place right here. I mean, turbos. We have cams too, but we have turbos. The BMW V10 engines are pretty expensive. Carburetor recommendations for LS, the 250 shot. The shot doesn't affect the carburetor thing at all. What is the rest of the motor? How much power is the rest of the motor making? What intake is it and all that? Because the carburetor you would choose for the power output of the NA motor. Richard, what would be the most horsepower you would run through a stock TPI naturally aspirated? What do you think is the limit? There's no limit for horsepower on a TPI. It doesn't, it just limits the, are you trying to boost it, or are you trying to run it NA, or what are you trying to do? The Tuneport is going to tell you when it stops making power. I mean, you saw, if you go look at the Tuneport video where I tested a bunch of other intake manifolds, the stock one is very, very restrictive. And then if you want to make more power on a 305 or 350 or whatever, we tested on a 383, you can, do cams and ported heads and stuff. But it's going to, if you have a stock Tuneport, it's designed to make 250 horsepower. And it doesn't size up very well from there. Richard, do you sell 4.6 cams? I do not. And not turbo headers. Do you have a 464 valve? Is that what you have? I don't know. I don't think I have any of those left. Look up Volvette. If you want to see a sleeper station wagon, twin turbo LS, walking an R1 at 200. That's pretty fast. Only thing is, putting 2 cross-flow heads from a single bank engine, you got to flip one head around. The K48 guys had to do it, so not too bad. Be hilarious for an Atlas. Final North Star is basically the Atlas, but a V8. He owns 7 of those multi-million cabins in Gatlinburg. The V16 Atlas is what you want? Richard, how's the Omni? It's working great. It's been sitting in the driveway for a long time. Got to do head gaskets on the LeBaron. What would you do to 2.2 second gen LeBaron? You should talk to the car farm guys. But how much power do you want to make? And what generation is the 2.2? Is it an early like throttle bodied one? Is it a later one that has the like the 1-piece or 2-piece intake manifold on it? And is it a turbo? Duration was 270 at 50. Yeah. I mean, a V10 or 12 Atlas motor will be racing only. Only Cammy has is a GoPro. Her at the track. Got a 2V and a 4V. 306. What brand of spark plugs do you favor? I don't favor anything. I just favor ones that work. A lot of times on the junkyard motors, we just reuse the junkyard plugs. Most of the time, the LS stuff, especially if it's boosted stuff, will get NGKs. But Westech had a bunch of Denso Iridium stuff that we used because Denso supplied them way back. And so I've run those in a lot of things. I ran those in that Bonneville Civic, and I've had nothing but good luck with them. 706 heads, Trailblazer SS, 92 millimeter throttle body. Michael, it reminds me, I wore my wrong cam shirt to the racetrack. Some people thought that was a camera. Wow. Is this chat live? Yeah, it's live. So ask a question. By the way, what's the highest hot oil pressure you've seen on the dyno? 110 PSI? That seems high, especially at 6,500. Something is amiss. I'd have to go back and look. It's been a long time since I looked at any of the modular Ford dyno stuff, but I could go back and look and see what oil pressure was on those. Yes, I was asking, what is the stock TPI limit horsepower, or where would it become a restriction? I like the look of it. I was wondering what to build under it. You're not going to be very successful building something under it. That's why we were talking about the different intake manifolds that will help you make more power. A stock Tuneport is probably a good 300 or 350 horsepower kind of thing. That's it. And it's already going to be restrictive there, because if you put a different intake manifold on there, you're definitely going to make more power. Same as musicians coming to me when I wear my Yamaha shirt. Stock 5.3 single plane intake. Is that the nitrous thing? A stock 5.3 with a 250 shot's a lot. I hope it's got a cam in it. No ticking or anything. Yeah, I actually moved my microphone over and kind of covered up the computer area. Could an L33 block run LS4 serpentine accessory by chance? I don't know. The block might. I don't know if it does. Does anybody know if the LS4 on the block has any bosses or accessory holes that are not there on other blocks? Just wanted to say I inherited an 87 Firebird with a 5.7. Nice. Got the 350. Got the big motor. Trying to swap a 383. Car, your videos have been a big help. Cool. That'd be cool. I like those. Hoping to put a centrifugal supercharger on it. That will definitely help. She was absolutely babied for the first 60,000 miles and has had AMSOIL ever since. We got 2 more minutes. How did our poll do? Would you choose a stealth ram over a dual plane and carb setup on your 305 build? 52% saying no. We have had really high oil pressure on stuff and had to take it apart to respring the pumps on them before. And when they're cold, especially, you got to watch out for some stuff. Did you ever run a Gilmer style pulley setup? Oh, only on a blower, but not on a not ever for accessories. It would rob power, I would imagine, and just be big and out of the way. I would run it on blower stuff though. Gilmer drives for 671s and 871s and stuff is really good. Some of the blowers are problematic if you try to put a cog belt on them if you don't have a blow-off valve. You won't exceed 150 even when cold. So is the spring stuck on it or something? What's going on? So is that what the bypass is at? You should be able to take a look at that. We got 1 more minute. Trying to get around no starter boss LS4 problem without making a spacer. That's all I can bolt the starter to. There should be photos of the LS4 block. I mean, obviously the crank is going to be specific because of the length of that stuff, but I don't know that I don't know if it has any other bosses. I don't know that I've seen one in a wrecking yard, but I don't remember looking for that. Baron is NA and it's low. I don't recall what it'd take. I think it's early fuel injected. I think it's an 84. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's going to be a throttle body injected thing. So a turbo is the easiest way to do that. You swap a turbo motor into it. Peak sugaring in Vermont right now. Is that for maple syrup? Have you ever had the chance to see a Paxton S93 Supercharger? Yeah. I remember when they came out. It's older. I'm thinking about the one. Thought it would be cool for testing. I've run those before. Someone sells an oil pan with a starter mounting boss. Where does a limo rank? Disassemble a motor. I saw that. That's pretty cool. I've put stuff together in not clean rooms, so that's probably fine. If you saw the video of Ben and I when we were at the car farm polishing the crank when it was in the block, people lost their mind about that. Maple syrup, indeed. And on that note, it is time to go. But I will see you guys all tomorrow. And no snakes today. I didn't even go out and look for snakes. I did catch the 2 king snakes yesterday, but I didn't go out today. Not every day. Not every day is a go fun play day.